The Galactic Council Chamber was the largest structure ever built by intelligent life. It stretched for 3 kilometers in every direction. Crystal spires rose toward a ceiling that glowed with the light of captured stars. 947 species had sent their representatives here today. They floated on hovering platforms. They stood on pedestals of living metal. They watched from observation pods that lined the walls like the eyes of ancient gods. And in the center of it all, standing alone on the defendant's platform, was a single human woman. Ambassador Lydia Vance wore a simple black uniform. She had no weapons, no guards, no protection of any kind. The beings around her commanded fleets that could burn planets to ash. They controlled empires that spanned thousands of star systems. They had ruled this galaxy for 60,000 years. She was not afraid. High, Arbiter Thesenak rose from his throne of crystallized light. His body was made of living glass, and when he spoke, the entire chamber vibrated with his voice. Humanity stands accused of crimes against galactic civilization. The murder of 17 billion Virati citizens. The destruction of an entire stellar system. The deployment of a weapon so terrible that its existence threatens every species in this chamber. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Species that had been enemies for millennia now found common ground. They all hated humanity. They all feared what humanity had become. How does your species answer these charges? The Arbiter demanded. Lydia looked up at the towering alien. She looked at the hundreds of representatives watching her with eyes and sensors and organs humans had no names for. Then she smiled. You have ruled this galaxy for 60,000 years, she said. Her voice was calm and steady. In all that time, you have never encountered a species like mine. You looked at humans and saw soft creatures. Short lives. No natural weapons. No telepathy. No hive mind. You saw prey. She touched a control on her wrist. A hologram appeared behind her, showing a single human figure standing in darkness. 3 years ago, you declared war on Earth. You sent the Virati Dominion to harvest our planet. 17 billion soldiers. The largest invasion fleet ever assembled. They expected easy prey. The figure in the hologram began to move. What they found instead was my husband. The hologram expanded. It showed recordings that had been hidden from the galaxy. A single man walking through orbital bombardment as if it were rain. His hands tearing through Virati warships like they were made of paper. His eyes glowing with a light that seemed to burn from somewhere beyond normal space. You want to know what happened to the Virati? Lydia swept her gaze across the silent chamber. He happened. And the only reason any of you are still alive is because I asked him very nicely to give you a chance to surrender. The chamber erupted in chaos. Aliens screamed in 100 languages. Weapons powered up. Defense shields activated. But Lydia stood perfectly still, waiting for them to understand what she already knew. They had lost this war before it even began. 3 years earlier, everything had been different. Earth had received its first contact with alien life, and it came as an ultimatum. The Galactic Council had declared humanity a developing resource. They assigned the Virati Dominion harvest rights to the Sol system. Humans would be processed for biological components. Earth would be stripped for minerals. Resistance was mathematically impossible. The governments of Earth panicked. Their weapons were useless against Virati technology. Their ships were toys compared to the alien fleet. Scientists worked frantically to reverse engineer alien systems, but they were decades away from anything useful. In desperation, the United Earth Coalition sent diplomats to every species that would listen. Most refused. The Virati were too valuable as the Council's enforcers. Humanity was too weak to protect, but one species offered hope. The Telvari ascendancy was ancient and powerful in politics. but weak in military strength. Their empress, a being named Iralith, had long opposed the council's cruel practices. She saw something in humanity that others missed. She saw potential. Iralith proposed a political marriage. A union between herself and a human would grant Earth-protected status under Telvari law. The Council could not attack a Telvari-protected world without breaking their own alliance. It would buy humanity precious time. There was one condition. The human had to be worthy. Not a politician or general, but someone who had proven themselves through sacrifice and courage. The Coalition chose Lieutenant Commander Marcus Vale. Marcus was a former Special Operations soldier turned humanitarian worker. He had once evacuated 12,000 civilians during the Jakarta collapse, carrying wounded children on his back for 16 hours straight. He was brave. He was kind. He was also dying. Cancer had spread through his body. The doctors gave him less than a year. When the Coalition asked him to marry an alien empress to save humanity, he agreed without hesitation. He had nothing to lose and everything to give. When Marcus arrived on the Telvari homeworld, Empress Iralith saw his condition immediately. Her species had powerful empathic abilities. They could feel the emotions and physical states of other beings. She felt his pain. She felt his fear. But more than that, she felt his extraordinary will to survive, to protect, to love. What Marcus did not know was that the Telvari had a secret. Their empathic abilities were not just psychic. They were biological. When a Telvari bonded with a partner, they shared more than emotions. They shared evolution. The marriage ceremony was simple and beautiful. Iralith took Marcus by the hand. Their minds touched for the first time. Energy flowed between them, ancient and powerful and utterly beyond human understanding. Then Marcus collapsed. His body convulsed on the floor of the ceremony hall. Iralith screamed for healers as her new husband writhed in agony. Something was happening inside him. Something was changing. His cells were rewriting themselves. His DNA was evolving in real time. And above Earth, the darkness of space split open as the Virati invasion fleet dropped out of hyperspace. The war had begun 3 months early. On the Telvari homeworld, Marcus Vale lay unconscious and dying. On Earth, 2 billion humans looked up at the sky and saw their death approaching. And in the Galactic Council chamber, species that had never agreed on anything began planning how to divide the spoils of humanity's extinction. None of them knew that everything was about to change. None of them knew what Marcus Vale was becoming, and none of them could possibly imagine that in just 17 days, the most powerful military force in galactic history would be utterly destroyed by a single human being who had married an alien empress to save his world. The galaxy was about to learn what humanity was capable of, would never forget the lesson. Marcus Vale was trapped inside his own mind. For 17 days, he drifted in a sea of fire and light. His body lay motionless on a bed of Telvari healing crystals, but inside him, a war was being fought. Every cell in his body was changing. Every strand of DNA was being rewritten by something ancient and powerful that he could not understand. Empress Iralith never left his side. Through their bond, she could feel what was happening to him. The Telvari empathic connection was pouring 60,000 years of evolution into his human biology. It should have killed him. Any other species would have been destroyed by the process. But humans were different. Their bodies had evolved on one of the most brutal planets in the galaxy. Earth had thrown everything at them. Ice ages, plagues, predators, natural disasters. And humans had survived it all. Their biology was designed to adapt, to overcome, to refuse to die. Marcus was not just surviving the transformation. He was improving on it. While Marcus dreamed of fire, Earth burned. The Varadi fleet had arrived without warning. 10,000 warships surrounded the planet like a net of death. Their bombardment began within hours. Cities that had stood for centuries were reduced to glass and ash in minutes. New York fell first. Then London. Then Beijing. One by one, the great cities of Earth disappeared under walls of plasma fire. 2 billion humans died in the first week. The military fought back with everything they had, but their weapons were useless. Human missiles exploded against Varadi shields without leaving a scratch dot in underground bunkers. The survivors prayed for a miracle. They did not know that their miracle was lying unconscious 300 light years away, his body slowly becoming something the galaxy had never seen. Irelith watched the reports from Earth, with tears streaming down her face. Through her bond with Marcus, she could feel the deaths of his people. Every human who died sent a ripple of agony through the connection. And Marcus, even in his coma, felt it too. On the 14th day, his vital signs changed. The Telvari healers rushed to his bedside. His heart rate was accelerating. His brain activity was spiking beyond anything their instruments could measure. And his cells were producing a type of energy that had never been recorded in any species. Irelith pushed through the healers and took her husband's hand. Through their bond, she reached into his mind. "Marcus," she called out, "can you hear me?" Deep inside his consciousness, Marcus heard her voice. He followed it like a lighthouse in a storm. He swam up through layers of fire and darkness until finally, he opened his eyes. They had changed color. Where his eyes had once been a simple brown, they now burned with a golden light that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than biology. Irelith gasped when she saw them. The healers backed away in fear. "Earth," Marcus whispered. His voice was different too, deeper, resonant, like the echo of a bell struck in an empty cathedral. "I can feel them dying." He sat up. The movement was impossibly smooth. His muscles had restructured themselves into something that defied normal physics. The cancer that had been killing him was completely gone. In its place was a strength that radiated from his body like heat from a furnace. "You cannot go," Irelith said. She gripped his arm, and for a moment she could feel everything he was feeling. The rage, the grief, the desperate need to protect his people. "The transformation is not complete. We do not know what you have become. If you tried to fight the Varadi now, you might destroy yourself." Marcus looked at his wife, the alien empress who had given him a second chance at life, who had bonded with him knowing he was dying, who had poured her own evolution into his broken body. "I know what I have become," he said softly. "I can feel it. Every change, every new ability. I can hear the thoughts of beings light years away. I can see radiation that human eyes were never meant to see. I can feel the fabric of space itself bending around me." He stood up from the healing bed. The crystals beneath him cracked from the pressure of his movement. "I was dying when I came to you. You saved me. You gave me something no human has ever had. And now my people are being slaughtered while I lie here doing nothing." Irelith's voice broke. "If you go, I do not know if I will ever see you again." Marcus cupped her face in his hands. His touch was gentle, impossibly gentle for someone who now had the strength to crush starships. "I will come back to you. I promise. But I have to do this. They are killing my people. I am going home." He kissed her once. It was a kiss that carried all the love he had never expected to find, all the hope he had abandoned when the doctors told him he was dying, all the gratitude for this strange, beautiful alien who had given him everything. Then he walked to the nearest airlock. "Marcus, wait," Irelith called out. "You cannot survive vacuum. You cannot cross 300 light years without a ship." He turned back to her and smiled. It was a sad smile. The smile of a man who knows he is about to do something terrible. Watch me. He opened the airlock and stepped into the void of space. The vacuum hit him like a wall of ice. Any normal human would have died in seconds. Their blood would have boiled. Their lungs would have exploded. Their brain would have shut down from lack of oxygen. Marcus felt none of it. His transformed body adapted instantly. His skin hardened against the radiation. His cells began producing their own energy, no longer dependent on oxygen or food. And deep inside him, the power that Iralith had given him began to pulse with something that defied the laws of physics. He focused on Earth, on the bond he shared with his wife, on the dying screams of his people that echoed through his mind. And then he moved. Space itself bent around him. Stars blurred into lines of light. The galaxy twisted and warped as Marcus Vale did something no human had ever done before. He crossed 300 light years in an instant, traveling through hyperspace without a ship, powered by nothing but his own will and the burning need to save his world. Iralith watched him go through their bond. She felt his rage building as he approached Earth. She felt him see the destruction the Varadi had caused. She felt something inside him break. Or perhaps it finally became whole. What have I done? She whispered. What have I made him into? The answer was already written in the stars. She had made him into a weapon. And then the Varadi were about to learn what that meant. Supreme Commander Gorath had never known fear. His species. The Varadi were apex predators. 8 legs. Armor-plated hides. Jaws that could bite through steel. They had conquered 100 worlds and harvested 1,000 species. Gorath himself had led the destruction of 12 civilizations. He had earned his title, the Unbroken, by surviving battles that had killed every soldier around him. When his sensors detected a single life sign entering Earth's atmosphere without a ship, he assumed his equipment was broken. Impossible, his second officer said. Nothing can survive atmospheric entry without shielding. Run the scan again, Gorath ordered. They ran it 12 times. The result was always the same. A single humanoid figure was falling toward the planet at terminal velocity. And according to the energy readings, it was still alive. Gorath leaned forward in his command chair. Where will it land? The northern continent. A region called Vancouver. Send a battalion to intercept. I want to know what this thing is. He would spend the rest of his very short life regretting that order. Marcus hit the ground like a meteor dot. The impact crater was 600 meters wide. Buildings collapsed for kilometers in every direction. A mushroom cloud of dust and debris rose into the poisoned sky. The Varadi battalion arrived within minutes. 3,000 soldiers surrounded the crater. They aimed weapons that could melt mountains. They prepared for whatever horror might emerge from that smoking pit. A man walked out of the fire. He was covered in ash and dirt. His clothes had burned away during re-entry, but his skin was untouched. His eyes glowed with a light that seemed to burn from somewhere beyond the visible spectrum. He looked like an ordinary human, except for the fact that he had just survived something that should have vaporized him. Open fire, the battalion commander ordered. 3,000 Varadi soldiers unleashed everything they had. Plasma bolts screamed through the air. Kinetic rounds flew at a fraction of the speed of light. Chemical weapons designed to liquefy organic matter spread across the impact zone in a toxic cloud. Marcus walked forward. The plasma washed over him like warm rain. The kinetic rounds bounced off his skin without leaving a mark. The chemical weapons dissolved against a barrier of energy that surrounded his body like an invisible shield. He did not run. He did not charge. He simply walked toward them, one step at a time, with the patience of a man who had all the time in the world. The first Varadi soldier died when Marcus reached him. The alien was 3 meters tall and weighed half a ton. Marcus grabbed his armored head and twisted. The body fell, and Marcus kept walking. The Battle of Vancouver lasted 4 minutes. When it was over, 3,000 Varadi soldiers lay dead, and Marcus Val stood in the center of their corpses without a scratch on his body. He looked up at the sky, where Varadi warships hung in low orbit like vultures waiting for their prey. Then he jumped to dot the recordings recovered from Varadi black boxes would later become the most watched videos in galactic history. They showed a single human figure rising through the atmosphere without any visible propulsion. They showed him reaching the first warship and punching through its hull with his bare hands. They showed him tearing through reactor cores and weapon systems and troop compartments, moving so fast that the cameras could barely track him. Ship after ship fell from orbit. Their crews barely had time to scream before Marcus was among them. A ghost of vengeance that no weapon could stop, Supreme Commander Gorath watched from his flagship in horror. He had commanded the largest invasion fleet ever assembled. 10,000 warships. 17 billion soldiers. Enough firepower to crack a planet in half, and one human was destroying all of it. All ships retreat. Gorath screamed into his communicator. Fall back to hyperspace. Abort the invasion. But it was too late. Marcus had heard the order. Through his enhanced senses, through the empathic network he now shared with every living thing, he felt Gorath's terror. He felt the commander's desperate hope that he could escape. Marcus did not intend to let him. The pursuit lasted 72 hours. Marcus hunted the Varati across Earth's orbit, through the asteroid belt, past the outer planets. He caught fleeing transports and ripped them apart. He disabled escape pods and left their occupants to drift. He was not fighting a battle. He was conducting an execution. When Gorath tried to jump to hyperspace, Marcus caught his flagship by the engine. He held onto the ship as it tried to tear itself free, his fingers digging into hull plating designed to withstand nuclear bombardment. Then he pulled. The flagship came apart in his hands. Gorath died screaming, just like his soldiers. Just like the billions of Varadi who had come to Earth expecting easy prey. Marcus floated in the debris field, surrounded by the corpses of an invasion fleet. Earth hung behind him, scarred and burning, but still alive. His people had survived, but he was not finished. The Varadi homeworld was 3 star systems away. It was the seat of their empire, the source of their cruelty, the place where they had planned the extinction of humanity. As long as it stood, Earth would never be safe. Marcus turned toward the distant stars. Through his bond with Iralith, he felt her fear. He felt her love. He felt her desperate plea for him to stop, to come home, to let this be enough. He could not stop. Not yet. Not until he was certain that no Varadi would ever threaten his people again. He vanished into hyperspace, and the galaxy held its breath. On Earth, survivors emerged from bunkers to find their skies clear for the first time in weeks. They looked up at the stars and wondered what had happened. They did not know yet that they had been saved by a single man. On the Telvari homeworld, Empress Iralith fell to her knees. Through their bond, she could feel Marcus's rage. She could feel him approaching the Varadi homeworld. She could feel the deaths beginning again, millions at a time, as he did to their civilization what they had tried to do to his. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered a question that had no good answer. "Marcus, what have you become?" The answer came through their bond. It was not words. It was a feeling. A mixture of grief and determination and terrible, terrible purpose. He had become what humanity needed. He had become a monster. And the Varadi were only the beginning. The Varadi dominion did not fall. It was erased. Marcus worked through their civilization like a surgeon cutting out a cancer. He destroyed their military installations first, and their shipyards, then their weapons factories. Every target was chosen with cold precision. Every attack was designed to prevent them from ever threatening another species again. The Varadi civilians who surrendered were spared. Those who had opposed the war from the beginning were protected. But everyone else, every soldier and politician and war profiteer who had voted to harvest humanity, met the same fate. 60 billion dead in 2 weeks. One man, the galaxy watched in stunned silence. Species that had bullied and exploited others for millennia suddenly found themselves looking over their shoulders. If one human could do this to the Varadi, what would happen if humanity decided to come for them next? The Galactic Council convened an emergency session for the first time in 3,000 years. High Arbiter Thesanek summoned representatives from every major species. The message was clear. Humanity had to be contained before it was too late. "We must act now," declared Ambassador Tralos of the Merchant Consortium. His species had grown rich selling weapons to both sides of every conflict. "If we wait, the humans will only grow stronger. We must destroy them while we still can." "And how do you propose to do that?" asked Elder Kethis of the Void Walkers. Her species had lived in deep space for 1,000,000 years, watching civilizations rise and fall. The Varadi had 17 billion soldiers. They are all dead. What force could we possibly assemble that would be more effective? The debate raged for days. Some species called for immediate attack. Others argued for diplomacy. A few suggested simply pretending humanity did not exist and hoping they would go away. In the end, fear won. The Council voted to authorize a preemptive strike. 7 species would contribute ships to a coalition fleet. It would be the largest military force ever assembled, even larger than the Varadi invasion. Their target was simple. Earth would be sterilized before humanity could produce more beings like Marcus Vale. While the Council plotted, Marcus sat in the ruins of his hometown. The small city in northern Minnesota had been destroyed during the bombardment. Every building was flattened. Every tree was burned. The house where Marcus had grown up was nothing but ash and memory. He sat in the center of the destruction, his hands dirty with soil, planting wildflowers in the scorched earth. The man who had destroyed an empire was trying to make something grow. Irelith found him there 3 days later. She had crossed 300 light years to reach him, traveling on a Telvari diplomatic vessel that moved slowly compared to her husband. When she saw him kneeling in the ashes, her heart broke. Marcus. He did not look up. His hands kept working, pressing seeds into the dead ground. "I remember all of them," he said. His voice was quiet, barely more than a whisper. "Every Varadi I killed, every face, every final thought. I carry them with me." Iralith knelt beside him. She put her hand on his shoulder and felt the weight of his grief through their bond. It was crushing, suffocating, a mountain of death that pressed down on his soul. "You did what you had to do," she said gently. "They were killing your people. I know." He finally looked at her. His golden eyes had dimmed since the battle. They looked tired now, haunted. "That does not make it easier. I became a monster to save my world. Now I have to live with that monster forever." She held him as he wept. The most powerful being in the galaxy, crying in the ashes of his childhood home, while his wife whispered comfort in his ear. They stayed like that for a long time. Then Iralith's communicator beeped with an emergency message. Ambassador Lydia. Vance's face appeared in the hologram. She was one of the few human diplomats who had survived the invasion, and she had been working tirelessly to establish contact with friendly species. "Empress Iralith, Commander Vale." Her voice was urgent. "I have terrible news. The Galactic Council has authorized a strike against Earth. 7 species are assembling a fleet. They plan to destroy our planet before you can produce more enhanced humans. Marcus stood slowly. The grief in his eyes began to transform into something else. Something harder. Something more dangerous. How long until they reach Earth? 3 months. They are gathering near the Varadi home system. The fleet will be even larger than the invasion force. Iralith felt her husband's anger rising through their bond. It was building like a storm, vast and unstoppable. She grabbed his arm before he could speak. "There is another way," she said quickly. "We can go to the Council. Face them directly. Show them that humanity does not have to be their enemy. That you do not have to be their monster." Marcus looked at her. "They want to destroy my world. They are afraid. Fear makes people do terrible things. We know this better than anyone." She gestured at the destruction around them. "You have proven what humanity is capable of in war. Now prove what you are capable of in peace." For a long moment, Marcus was silent. Iralith could feel him wrestling with himself through their bond. The rage demanded release. The grief demanded isolation. But somewhere beneath both, there was still the man she had married. The humanitarian who had saved 12,000 civilians. The soldier who had chosen to die helping others. "If they refuse?" he asked quietly. "Then you will do what you must. But give them a chance. Give yourself a chance." She took his hands in hers. "You are not a monster, Marcus. You are a man who was forced to do monstrous things. There is a difference." He stared at her for a long time. Then slowly, painfully, he nodded. "One chance," he said. "I will give them one chance." Lydia Vance watched them through the communicator with tears in her eyes. "I will arrange the diplomatic credentials. The Council will be forced to hear you. Galactic law requires them to grant an audience to any accused species." Marcus and Iralith boarded her ship the next day. They traveled toward the Council chamber, a married couple walking into a den of beings who wanted them dead. Behind them, on Earth, something was changing. The children born after the invasion were different, stronger, more empathic. The Telvari gift was spreading through humanity's genetic code. And ahead of them, the Coalition fleet began its slow march toward Earth. Time was running out. Everything depended on what happened next. The Galactic Council chamber fell. Completely silent when Marcus Vale entered. 947 species had sent their most powerful representatives. Many of them carried weapons capable of destroying cities. Defense shields had been erected around every platform. Temporal stasis fields stood ready to freeze any threat. Reality anchors had been deployed to prevent hyperspace escapes. None of it would matter. Everyone in the chamber knew it. Marcus walked slowly to the defendant's platform where Lydia Vance had finished her opening statement. He looked smaller than the legends suggested. Just a man of average height with tired eyes and shoulders that carried the weight of billions of deaths. The most dangerous being in the galaxy. Looked like he had not slept in weeks. High Arbiter. Vesenak's crystal form pulsed with barely contained fury. "You have slaughtered more sentient beings than any individual in recorded history. What defense can you possibly offer?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke, and his voice carried not through speakers, but through the empathic network that Iralith had subtly extended throughout the chamber. Every being present could feel the truth of his words. "I remember all of them." The chamber stirred uneasily. "Every Varadi I killed. Every face. Every final thought. I carry them with me, and I will carry them forever." He paused. "That is not a defense. That is just the truth." He looked up at the assembled representatives. Beings with tentacles and beings with wings. Creatures made of living light and creatures that existed partially in other dimensions. all of them afraid of him, all of them waiting to hear what he would say. You authorized my planet's destruction because we were weak. When I stopped the Varati, you tried again because we were strong. I could kill everyone in this chamber before your weapons activated. I could destroy every fleet you have assembled. I could burn a path across this galaxy until nothing remains that could threaten humanity. The terror in the room was almost solid. Iralith could feel it pressing against her mind like a wall of ice. But I am not going to do that. Marcus's voice softened. Not because I cannot, because I choose not to. He extended his hand, and a hologram appeared. It showed a map of the galaxy with humanity's territory highlighted in blue. My people have spent their entire existence fighting each other, their environment, the limitations of their own biology. We are very good at war, but that is not what we want. The hologram shifted. Now it showed images from Earth, humans rebuilding ruined cities, doctors treating the wounded, farmers planting crops in scorched soil, children playing in the streets of settlements built from wreckage. What we want is to live, to explore, to create, to love. We want what every species wants, and we are willing to fight for the chance to have it in peace. Iralith stepped forward to stand beside her husband. Her presence radiated calm authority, the weight of 60,000 years of Telvari civilization. The Telvari have shared our evolution with humanity, she announced. What Marcus has become, others will become. You cannot stop this. You cannot contain it. You can only decide whether the species that emerges will be your ally or your enemy. The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted in 100 languages. Some demanded immediate attack. Others called for negotiation. A few species simply fled, unwilling to be present if violence began. High Arbiter Thesenak raised his crystal arms for silence. We will vote, he declared. All in favor of war against humanity. 300 species voted yes. Their platforms glowed red in the holographic display. All in favor of peace. 647 species voted yes. Their platforms glowed green. The chamber fell silent as everyone realized what had happened. Humanity had won. Not through violence, not through fear, through a single man standing before his enemies and choosing to give them a chance. Marcus felt his legs tremble. He had been ready to fight. He had been ready to kill every being in this chamber if they refused peace. The relief of not having to do that was almost overwhelming. Iralith caught him as he stumbled. Through their bond, she felt his exhaustion. He had been running on rage and grief for months. Now that the crisis was over, his body was finally demanding rest. It is done, she whispered. You can stop now. The coalition fleet was recalled. Earth was granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council. Humanity would be watched, monitored, and contained within certain boundaries. But they would not be destroyed. It was not perfect. It was not complete trust. But it was a beginning. 50 years later, the galaxy had transformed. Humanity had spread to 1,000 worlds. Enhanced humans, children of the Telvari gift, served as peacekeepers and diplomats across the galaxy. Their unique abilities allowed them to sense conflict before it began and resolve disputes that had festered for millennia. The species that had once feared humanity now depended on them. Human creativity and human determination had become essential resources in a galaxy that had grown stagnant over 60,000 years of council rule. Marcus and Iralith lived quietly on a world at the edge of explored space. Their home was small, surrounded by forests and gardens that Marcus had planted himself. Their children and grandchildren visited often. Human and Telvari, and something beautifully between. The scars of war had faded, though they never fully healed. Some nights, Marcus still woke from dreams of the Varati. He could still see their faces, still hear their screams. The weight of 60 billion deaths never left him, not completely. On those nights, Iralith would hold him. Their bond would flow between them, her ancient wisdom mixing with his fierce love. They would watch the stars until the memories faded enough for sleep to return. "Do you regret it?" she asked once, in the quiet hours before dawn. Marcus thought about the question for a long time. He thought about the cancer that had been killing him, about the invasion that had nearly destroyed his world, about the choice he had made to become something terrible in order to protect something precious. "I regret that it was necessary," he said finally. "But I do not regret protecting my people. I do not regret finding you. I do not regret the choice we made together." He looked out at the stars, at the galaxy that had tried to destroy humanity and instead found itself forever changed by them. "I just hope that our children never have to make the same choices we did." Iralith smiled and rested her head against his shoulder. "They will not. That is why we fought. That is why we survived." Outside their window, the stars burned eternal. Somewhere among them, the children of Earth were building a future their ancestors could never have imagined. A future of exploration and creation and love. A future that one man had bought with blood and tears and a choice to give his enemies a chance. Marcus Vale, the monster who became a man again, held his wife close and watched the dawn approach. The war was over. Story was just beginning, and the galaxy would never forget what humanity was capable of when pushed to the edge. Not destruction, not vengeance, but mercy. That was the lesson Marcus Vale had taught them. That was the legacy he would leave behind. And that was why, in the end, he had become something greater than a weapon. He had become hope.